Poddin My Noggin, hosted by CK Sims, creating a platform to elevate, educate, and heal by creating a space where people can share their stories of struggle, triumph, and redemption. CKS Media.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Poddin My Noggin. Today, we are joined by author Rhonda Parker Taylor. Am I correct?
That is correct. You got it right.
Okay, perfect. And I can already tell that one of my best friends is going to lose their S word because for some reason I'm noticing that my webcam is zooming in and zooming out. Do you see that? So I'm going to try and not talk with my hands today, although it's still doing it even while I'm just talking with my hands. Not talking with my hands, but that's okay. So welcome to Poddin My Noggin, Rhonda. It is great to have you here. And I was reviewing the form that you filled out today. So you wrote a book, right?
That's correct.
What is your book called?
Okay, so it's Crossroads. Crossroads is a suspense thriller. And some people might say, well, why are you on a podcast that has a lot about mental health and being stable and doing all the right things about yourself? Well, when I wrote Crossroads, I wrote it because I wanted to accomplish something that was a weakness for me, first of all. And then secondly, as I started developing the characters, I realized I was making them all out of life balance. So I'm like, well, no wonder, because that's what I do with my clients all the time. And I always do a workbook with them called The Journey to Life Balance. And I'm like, okay, well, this is great. They can be the case studies that I could actually take this workbook and produce it into the mainstream and help people get more joy out of their lives. So the crime novel, every single one of the characters is out of balance. You have the workaholic who ends up getting called to jury duty, and all she can think about while she's there is getting back to work and how she's getting behind. And then you have the law and order guy that's the prosecutor that's dedicated to law and order, and he's eating out of cardboard boxes as he's preparing for each trial. And then you have the main co-defendant, Billy Knuckles, who's dedicated to his friends. And now, guess what? He's in trouble, and he has to decide whether he's going to turn on his friend or take the charge with him. So you can imagine, just in our own lives, when we make bad decisions and we're at crossroads, we sometimes, make the right ones, we make the wrong ones. Sometimes they do good things for us, sometimes they don't. And so every single one of them are at a crossroads in their lives that can impact their lives for the rest of their lives.
Well, I love that. And I'll tell you why. My favorite genre is suspense thriller. Sometimes I sit back after reading a suspense thriller and think to myself, I'm like, why am I like this? Why do I enjoy these books so much? I think when we come from chaos sometimes, if our lives were chaos for a duration of time, we do find comfort in it. And the same thing with watching true crime documentaries on television. I'm reading a book by over there, and I don't want to make his name. I want to say James Patterson, but I don't think that's right. But the book is called Framed, and it's a bunch of people who were wrongly convicted.
Oh, okay. So that does sound like a Patterson kind of a book, because he's really into the detail of the legal system.
Yeah, so I apologize to him or whoever the author is. It's two. It's the main person who I'm familiar with their name, but it's gone from me, and the other person who is a part of a program in the States that helps individuals who end up in prison wrongfully. His name is Jim McCloskey. So big forgiveness, or I apologize for doing that. But I will correct in the summary what the name of the book is. I just don't want to go off camera to get it. So you wrote this book, Crossroads, but I want to go back a little bit, if you don't mind.
No, go right ahead.
And yes, people might be wondering, okay, well, what are you coming on a mental health show about? But we're not just a mental health show. Yes, a lot of everything we do in life surrounds mental health.
Mm-hmm.
right? Physical health and
Right.
mental health. But everybody's story is different and everybody defines their version of success differently, right?
Exactly. You're right.
So for you, I had to read it a couple times because I think what I didn't catch the first time but caught today when I was reading through your form is that you have gone through extraordinary grief in your life. Do you feel comfortable talking about that?
Oh, definitely. So, first, I'd like to preface it for anybody that's out there listening. Remember, your resources are your friend. Things like podcasts and us sharing our stories only brings us all closer together. And if we can start our day with kindness and end our day with compassion, we are ahead of the game. A lot
Yes.
of people ask me, well, how, when you've had such a difficult, and some people might say, well, she looks like she's had a charmed life. We all have charmed lives. But
Absolutely.
we all have difficulties too. So my difficulties started way back in kindergarten. I flunked.
Okay.
So that's probably the first trauma. Then I was terrified of reading in front of people. So I would literally get sick and go home every time they would say we were going to have to stand up in front of the class. And then I found, of course, they had a good reward system for me because then what they turned around and did is they have on television Leave It to Beaver and all the wonderful shows, Spanky and Friends and all these shows that I would rather be doing than standing up in front of the class. I say that to say we all have our own vulnerabilities, and then every one of our challenges that's set in this world also gives us an opportunity to grow and expand and become more resilient. So I started young with challenges. Then I had learning challenges. Then I had grief challenges. I guess I could even say I had trauma challenges, so that would have been ACE, what they would consider ACE, adverse childhood experiences too. I had a person pull a knife on me. I was lucky that I didn't end up dead on the railroad tracks like what happens in Crossroads. But the journaling of the writing allowed me to explore what would have happened as at 15 if that person didn't let me go. What
Mhm.
would have happened if I had been the one found on the railroad tracks? What would the police have found? What would have what would have happened? And then you go into the grief aspect of things. And the first major grief would have been grandparents, of course, which is kind of a normal cycle of life, but that's still traumatic for kids. But I was there, I was able to hold their hands and say goodbye and had peace with it. Then my mother had breast cancer and died September 19th of 2004. That was a very hard loss, like all of us that have lost parents. And then my son, my adopted son, was at work on September 19th, 2009, and a person that they had put out of the bar came back at last call and shot him and the whole security team, which were all his friends. So then that was the next major loss. And I can tell anybody out there in the world that when you're going through trauma, when you get that news, whatever trauma it is, it could be that you're sick. It could be that somebody else is sick. It could be a death. It could be anything. It doesn't matter. It could be a divorce. It could be your dog dying. It doesn't matter. It's traumatic to you.
Mhm.
Name it first. And when you can name it, so when I got that knock on the door, September 19th, 4 years after my mom on September 19th, and it's a police officer that tells you that, hey, D'Angelo didn't quite make it last night home. And you know he has kids. You know that the life is going to change in that one moment. I can tell you, out of all the years I'd lived in my home, I saw a very small crack about this big where the house had been settling, and I followed that crack to the ceiling to prevent me from losing my mind. That's why I say claim it. and realized, and when I got to the ceiling, I heard my mother's voice say, it's going to be okay. And I started the preparation at that point. Here again, I'm dealing with trauma now. I'm dealing with life changes that will never be the same. So, like you said, a lot of times, why would you write a fiction novel, or why would this happen? Well, sometimes journaling, even if it's fiction, allows you to grow together. And what I did with each character in Crossroads is I did not only a soap note for you medical junkies out there, where I learned everything about where I created for each person, but I did a DSM-5 assessment so I would know how their behaviors were going to be. Anybody that's had a DSM-5 assessment, you all know that all that is medical and psychological terminology that says they got the list out and found out which one fit me. So I did that with every one of my characters. But there's more. After my mother, after D'Angelo, I turned around and had an uncle that passed 2 years later on September 19th. And then my father was in the hospital, and he had asked me to come shave him and do the normal caregiving. And I had a really weird feeling, hadn't even really thought about what day it was. And then the next morning, September 19th, he was in ICU. And they told us he wasn't going to make it. And they could try to do an event, but he was too old. And this was during the pandemic, 2020. And we asked him, do you want us to try the event? And luckily he was awake enough to say no. And we told him, well, you realize what day it is? And he said, let them have their own day. Do it at 12:01. So all of this, and I tell my story, so I hope that somebody out there that might be going through some kind of, trauma, drama, self-inflicted, life-inflicted, it doesn't matter how it was inflicted, realizes that you redefine your success based on your life experience. And that success can make pain grow into purpose, and it can make sustainability meet your own strategy, and it can make something beautiful out of something that isn't so beautiful. Because you can learn that journey is part of it. Because with the storm, you're not just in a storm that with no control. The storm gets the energy from you, is how I look at it. Because when that storm is hitting and you get part of the energy, you can grasp what's going on, and you have the ability to create a vision, to create an action. So for me, my purpose with Crossroads, it's not going to be the perfect, because there's more to come. But it does give me a platform to say, hey, I want to entertain you. I want you to read something that makes you realize that in everybody's crossroads. And it gains some pretty good, and for those people out there, gains some pretty good people that liked it. One is Meryl Hemingway, one of the biggest advocates for mental health there is out there. She read it, and she released a YouTube video, and she wrote the foreword saying that it's not only a crime novel, but it makes you reflect on what decisions you're making. And what I loved about her YouTube videos, she said, when we reach that crossroads, it's time for us to realize that even chocolate has an expiration date. So then now I can release the workbook. And then guess what? I can release, and it's coming out soon too. You're the first one to see the cover, is another workbook that's going to be an ebook. It's just resilient. That's all I care about, is that people understand that they can be resilient. We'll go through what resiliency is. Let's build it. Let's talk about it. There's poems I've written during my storm moments. And I want everybody out there in the world to realize, let's do this together. We don't have to lead this world and have a life map that means that we have to be mean, angry, and upset all the time.
True. So that was a lot in say 15 minutes, but it's interesting because like what I'm hearing, I think, is that, and just for listeners at home as well, is that there seems to be your goal now, your purpose now is to talk about resilience and to talk about how to transform trauma into purpose, regain power, reshape your life, that sort of thing. And when you're talking about your past traumas, it's, for me, it's evident that you've done a lot of healing in those areas, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I want people at home to understand that, or and maybe I'm projecting, so I always have to be careful with this as well, right? I want people at home to understand that you're not glossing over them,
Mm-mm. No way.
right? We have a
Right.
half an hour, 40 minutes of a podcast. You're choosing to speak about what your purpose is now, and you're
Right.
being intentional about that. And so I'm always mindful of like how people may be perceived. And obviously we can't control that all the time. We can't, right?
No, never.
Because we're not responsible for our reputation, and people might disagree with that, because we don't define our reputation. Our reputations are defined by people's perspectives, right? But we can
Mm-hmm.
define our brand,
Exactly. And
right?
what what I want for myself, because I have to work on it daily.
Yes.
Just like anybody else, we have to work at practice, and by doing that, you can you can do it through nutrition. You can do it through therapy. You can do it through exercise. You can do it through mindfulness. You can do it through journaling. So, as I journaled, I created a world.
Yes.
And in doing that, it helped me explore the what ifs.
Well, I think that that's a beautiful part about writing as well, is that it's kind of cathartic in
Mm-hmm.
that sense. And you can heal parts of yourself in ways that you may not be able to do in real life. So you're not going to go out and murder somebody,
Right.
but maybe there's a part of you who needs to feel like you have the power to do that in a book, right?
Exactly.
So in a story, or what, you're not going to go out and stand up to a gang member or something like that, but you could do that in a book safely and
Right.
ruminate on those feelings and all of that. We're going to talk more about resilience and what's coming next for you when we return from this quick break.
This month, join our Valentine's Quilt Sweepstakes, hosted by Poddin My Noggin and made by CK Sims. Enter for the chance to win the Valentine's Quilt and matching pillow by subscribing to Poddin My Noggin's YouTube channel. The sweepstakes will run from February 1st to February 28th, when the winner will be announced. Additionally, you can receive 10 extra entries by purchasing the Easy Beginners Digital Quilt Pattern Valentine's Edition. Check out the sweepstakes rules below and access the link in the description to enter today.
Partner today with CK Sims and Poddin My Noggin to get in front of an audience that cares. You will be supporting mental health stories, tales of resilience, and uplifting content, aligning your brand with bringing goodness, authenticity, and kindness front and center. This spot could be yours. Do you have a story of struggle and resilience? One that you want to share with others and possibly help someone through their own struggles? Find the link in the show description and fill out the guest form today.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we are talking with Rhonda Parker Taylor. And it's I love that name, by the way. I think it's very like catchy and like it's awesome. People are going to remember that name. So before the break, we were talking about how you've gone through traumas in your life, right from kindergarten all the way up through life, losing a son. I know that you say adopted son, but in my mind, adopted
It's still my
biological,
same.
it's just your son. And we were talking about how you found sort of purpose in writing your book, Crossroads, which I totally want to read, by the way, and can put somewhere on my bookshelf for the remainder of the year. But I want to talk about resilience because so you're working on a new. I got to be the first person to see that workbook,
Mm-hmm.
and so resilience is a really beautiful topic that I don't. And what I love about resilience is people don't know they have it.
Right.
They discount their resilience that they employ in their everyday lives, right?
Exactly.
All the time. And when I lead people, I've been privileged in my life to be a leader of incredible people and teams and projects and whatever those things are. When I lead people, I always lead with teaching them resilience, the resiliency toolkit, right? And
Mm-hmm.
how I break this down for them. And I want to hear how you break this down for people
Mm-hmm.
and your tips and tricks. What I typically do is I try to explain to them if they're feeling overwhelmed or they don't think that they can get through this next whatever's coming situation. I ask them, I'm like, is there another time in your life, if you can recall, where you felt similarly to how you're feeling right now? Well, it differs with every person, but like there was this time, like in university, when I had to give like a full mock presentation on this, that, or that, the other thing, and like I was freaking out and I was sick and I was gonna drop out of university and like all of these bad things. And I'm like, and what happened? And this actually was a conversation. She said, this person, I just did it. Okay. I'm like, and what happened? What do you mean? What happened when you did it? Nothing. I did it and it was over. I'm like, so that's a pretty big tool in your resiliency toolkit that you can use right now. Right? So that's
Exactly.
how I kind of set it up. But please tell us some, because you've talked about it in your form as well, like and you've touched on it in this conversation about resiliency and in all the different aspects. And I really loved what you said about trauma, by the way. I loved whether it's self-inflicted or life-inflicted, because I have a lot of self-inflicted trauma.
No, we all do, don't we?
Yes, I have a lot of self-inflicted. And you're going through the different things. I was like, check, 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 check. Um, so let's talk about what resiliency looks like for you.
Sure. So first, I come from an immigrant family. So we had the more harsher version of what I was raised with, and that was basically suck it up and do it, right? And as I got older, I realized the very first thing I do once we get into the journaling part of resilience is exactly what you said. Give me a time, and what were the outcomes? But what people don't realize is we have factors of resilience that we don't even think about. And if we just spent a little time reflecting and having some self-awareness, we would have it prepared when those times come. The first one is our individual factors that, that we have control over, that we can prepare ourselves with. And it's like a building block for ourselves. It's our attitude, our optimism, all of these things that, that we can put in practice. And then you have your social factors. Who can you go to when you have health questions? Who can you go to? You create this world where you already know where you are. Who do you have strong relationships? We call it, the eco map, but who cares what it's called? It's like who has the squiggly line that you should never go to when you're upset, and who has the solid line when you have a question or you need emotional support that you're going to go to get that. But then, you also have to realize that those family and friends of our ecosystem, they don't have time for us all the time. Sometimes they have lives. Sometimes they're going through things. So you also, like when I was going through my grief, one of my biggest grief cycles, I'd get in the car and I don't know why every time I was in the car, I'd be crying. I would be just falling apart. And I'd be driving, and guess what? There was always either a mental health facility open, a church open, a 12-step program open, and I would plop my butt in the seats, and I didn't care what denomination, if it was religious. They had me on mats, they laid hands on me, they put oil on my head, and you know what? I felt better.
Connection.
And so that's your social networking. You've got those social factors out there. You have your environmental factors. You have your health communities. You've got all your communities out there that can also, which is also part of your social connection, and it's the environment. And then you have your health. You have to protect it. Eating, I'm not saying diet. Diet is not even part of my description anymore. It doesn't even come out of my mouth. And the reason why is it's got to be about health. I know if I've been sitting too long, get up off my butt and put my desk up and stand, because my doctor told me that I had piriformis, and piriformis means butt wasting away. And guess what? Every time I sit too long, my butt hurts. So stand up. And my legs hurt, my back hurts. So, there's just little practices that I can put in my daily life, and others can too. Just make the list of the things you have to watch. You know your body. You know your triggers. You know when you're stressed. You know that blueberries are good for you. And if you like blueberries, just put them in put them in a bowl and eat them. Whatever it is that helps you with those factors. But the main thing is reflection. Grit and passion only comes from self-awareness of why you feel the way you do. I can't tell you what stress you're going through, but your body knows it, you know it, and you know what you're internalizing. And in doing that, what ends up happening is we're unlocking ourselves. We're unlocking the misery because we can find happiness in the trials. It might be only one moment of laughter, but you may, I can remember when my mom had cancer and she was going into, chemotherapy, and we were all meeting up and, gonna show her well. And D'Angelo came, and, he was African American. So he brought a wig for her, but he brought her to make her laugh, an afro. And you know what? That moment of laughter in a time of trauma can make the world of difference for the rest of the day.
Absolutely.
Not only for yourself, but whoever else is with you in the trauma.
Absolutely. So if somebody was home right now watching this, right? And sadly, there are so many people who are not aware enough to even know that they're not self-aware, right? Here's the thing, right? We face this all the time. So I am always puzzled because I think to myself, okay, how would someone who's listening to, say, this show and thought to themselves, well, I feel pretty self-aware, how would they determine truthfully if they were self-aware or not?
Well, I think for me, the first thing to do is kind of deconstruct. And that's kind of a business term. And it comes from my business background, but deconstruct not only your value system, but your thought processes and what you really truly believe. Because many a times what we believe has been what we've been told.
Yes.
And so it could be negative, it could be positive. I can't tell you which it is for you, anybody, because, as I've deconstructed myself and found my own gems and my own, oh my goodness, I can't believe they taught me that, or I learned that through life, that I realized that okay, you know, I need to make some changes. And when I do that, that means I have to go through one thing at a time, and then also look at anytime I fearful or have an emotion that's kind of uncomfortable. Why do I feel that way? And then question it, and then find out if it's valid. I'll give you an example. This is one of the best examples I can come up with. I was told all my life, you're allergic to peanuts. Deathly. We had to save you in the hospital. Don't ever eat a peanut or be around peanut oil. So all my life, every restaurant we went, everybody's, oh, don't give her anything with any peanut. Well, one day I accidentally ate a peanut. I didn't have a reaction. So then I'm talking to my husband and I'm like, well, maybe it's only one kind of peanut. I wonder what kind of peanut it is, because peanuts are good for you. And I'm trying to do this, be more healthy. And he's like, well, how are you going to figure that out? So one by one, I started eating peanuts and and then went and got tested, because none of them gave me a reaction. I'm not allergic to peanuts. Never been allergic to peanuts. Whatever happened that day that I ended up in the hospital had nothing to do with peanuts. But all my life I was told I was allergic to peanuts. But guess what? I like the taste of peanuts, but because I'm conditioned mentally that I'm allergic, I put one in my mouth and I about puke. The consistency and my whole body has learned that peanuts are going to kill me. Mm-hmm. So that is a version. I'm not telling people to go out there. Nobody go out there and eat peanuts if they've been told that they're allergic to it. That is not what I'm saying. The purpose of that is what I learned was not true and wasn't true to me. So I had to deconstruct. Okay, wait a minute. You're not allergic to peanuts, but how are you going to get this in your diet instead of meat and some of the things that we eat for protein instead, where you're not having an aversion to the physical peanut in your mouth? So I'm grinding them up. I'm doing all these other versions, finding the oils, the peanut butter, whatever version I can get in, because the taste I like. But it's that mental image, that negativity that, and it's the same thing if someone says, you're not smart. I was told I wasn't smart. Not only did I flunk kindergarten, by the time my senior year was there, I was still having struggles academically. I have a doctorate now. So I had to get rid of that negative self-talk to believe, and it took reading Daniel Goleman's books on emotional intelligence that I realized, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to have the highest IQ to be successful. I just have to have the tools. So it's really all about, for me, deconstructing what I've been taught, what my experiences have been, and then say, what do I really believe? And guess what? It's okay for those to change. They don't have to be fixed, because what if I learn something new and find out something different?
All of that, because I think it's so important for people to realize that they are a culmination of their nuclear family and authorities that they were around, authoritative figures that they were around as a child, that we adopt like a lot of our core values, a lot of our belief systems, a lot of our truths, and I air quote truths, right? And until you do the work, right, you don't realize that, wait a second, I don't actually believe what my father believes, or I don't actually subscribe to the theories that my mother has spoken throughout life, or I am smart because I too struggled academically. I don't have a doctorate or anything like that, but I would consider myself a successful and an intelligent person. But it's interesting. It took me a really long time. And one thing you said I love, because I've talked about this on my podcast before, is that my life is pre-35, post-35. That's how I split it. And at 35, I learned how to reprogram my mind and the internal dialogue, because that internal dialogue from childhood was a dumpster fire. And so I love that, because when you talk about resilience, we do have all those factors that we have to consider. We can set ourselves up to be able to be more resilient by ensuring that our factors and support systems and environments and food and health is all working
and
wonderful.
and evaluate it before you get into the crises, before you get into the storm. And when you do that, oh my goodness, you realize that the storm is just as beautiful as a calm day.
I love that. I love that. And so when does this workbook come out?
If I had my way, it would have been yesterday. I'm almost done. I'm doing some illustration and I keep changing. I need to just say it's ready. So it's the first half of it describes resiliency and what it is and what those protective factors are, and kind of helps deconstruct how people think about resiliency, what is grit. And then the second half is 31 days of kind of a devotional meditation. So I take you through first, like, what do the famous people say about resiliency? Then we go to, what do they say in spirituality about resiliency? Then I do my own poem of what happened when I was in a storm. And then we have, okay, what are your thoughts? What, like the first one and day one is picking a time that you've been, under, stress, or had some kind of time that you had to have some resiliency, and then how did it come? And then it goes through 31. So we do some deep breathing. We talk about how breath is important. We talk about, the food items that you could add to your life to help you be more resilient. And we talk about, activities that you can do. Some of them things very easy. I'm not talking about just exercise. I'm talking about things like coloring. That mindful movement of, doing activities that make you focus into who you are, what you're doing, and what brings you peace.
I love this. So everyone at home, keep an eye out for Resilient by Rhonda Parker Taylor to be out sometime in the next maybe few months.
Yeah, I'd say about a month, probably. It's about a month. So if they go to my website, they can follow.
Okay,
and
perfect.
then they'll get the date. And
we're going to link your website as well on the webcast, and that is RhondaParkerTaylor.com. So it's you can get the books on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I'll make sure to link all your social media as well, and then Crossroads. Buy this book because it sounds really interesting, and I really want to read it now because I love that genre, right? But I also like the idea that it's going to present them and make you reflect at your own choices. So I find that fascinating.
Well, thank you. And it's a behavioral crime thriller. So it's like an Agatha Christie where you're looking at the behaviors of the people trying to find the clues.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I like that. Well, Rhonda, it was a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you very much for coming on this show.
Thank you.
I wish you the very best. And to everyone out there, tune in again next week and go out there and live your wildest dreams. Until next time, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
For media and sponsorship inquiries, email info@ccsims.com or visit ccsims.com and fill out the contact form. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. A new episode airs every Saturday. CKS Media.